Hello, everyone. Welcome to Imagine Science Film's Experimenta series. I'm Nona Griffin, the Director of Communications at Imagine Science. And today, unlike our other Experimentas, we're going to be having a little bit more of a casual conversation with one of our partners, our new partner, Marina Abramovic Institute. And today with us, we have Communications Director Siena Oristaglio, who will be telling us a little bit about their organization and how we see this partnership kind of progressing and why we're partnering and the commonalities between science and art. So interestingly, Siena and I not only have connections with our organizations themselves, but also in our backgrounds, because we both have a background in art and science personally, and actually came from the same college program. So Siena, do you want to tell us a little bit about what your background is in school and how you fell into this field of performance art?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Nona said, we both went to New School University, and my field of study there was really, I chose the major arts in the context of interdisciplinary science. So my real focus was looking at how performance can affect us on a neurological level or a biological level. So I've always been interested in performance. I've always been interested in science, specifically genetics and neurobiology. And so for me, understanding how performance acts on a physical level, on our bodies and brains, has always been a topic that I wanted to pursue. And so that's what I did at New School.
Right, and it's so interesting because both Siena and I also had a similar professor in common, and so there's a lot of overlap there. I similarly studied biology at the New School, and my original major was fine art, so there's definitely an overlap there as well. So Siena, what was your interest, I guess, in kind of the biological impact of performance art? You know, psychologically, it takes a lot of mental preparation to do long duration performance. Where does that interest stem?
For me, I was really interested in particularly looking at the neuroscience of empathy, and that's something that I've looked at. I looked at throughout my sort of time in academia, and still look at now with these projects, these art science collaborative projects that we do at the Institute, and really understanding how we can read other people's body language during performance, and what allows us to do that in the brain, and really understanding if, for me, I was really curious about the potential of performance to grow our empathic abilities, essentially, on a neurological level. And so that for me was where I really focused my time. And, you know, again, as you said, I think the turning point for me was this mentor that we both had, this professor, Katun Shimani, who basically showed me that I didn't have to split my interest into two, my interest in neuroscience and in biology, as well as my interest in performance and the emotional impact of performance, is that actually I could bring them together into sort of a similar space and kind of analyze from both angles, you know, what's going on, both on an emotional level but also on a scientific level. And you know, duration comes into play here because there's something really extraordinary. You know, the processes in the mind change as you repeatedly repeat actions or spend a great deal of time practicing your craft. So that's something that we've looked at as well at the Institute.
Right. And so I guess maybe we should talk a little bit about how both of our organizations really celebrate this overlap between art and science. I mean, performance art in itself is inherently scientific, and that's not something that's necessarily openly talked about, and science in itself really has an overlap with the arts in terms of the creativity and also just the process of developing experiment. That's something that I definitely carried away from my studies at the New School. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about how both of our organizations kind of achieve that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something that I've noticed, because at the Institute we study long durational work, not just of art, long durational works of, you know, of course, the immaterial art forms such as performance art, video, film, music, but also we look in the sciences for durational science projects. So this was sort of the moment where, when you said that the Imagine Science was doing a film festival, a science film festival that whose theme was duration, we realized that this was a match made in heaven, essentially.
Yeah, so this all came about really because we discovered, long duration performance art. There's something that happens at the 6-hour moment that Siena had spoken about, and it's not necessarily proven scientifically that at 6 hours something occurs, but it's a feeling, and it's psychologically something there happens. And it's an experience that I don't know if you want to mention a little bit about how Marina came up with that 6-hour point, but that's something that really interests Imagine Science, because our festival this year, the theme is time. And so we're doing a lot of different kind of experimental things throughout the festival that have to do with duration, whether it's duration in scientific experiments or discussing the duration of biology itself, such as development. And so I think that's kind of where we really found the crossover between our organizations, is this idea of the 6 hours and beyond, and what that really, what kind of impact that really has on someone's work and focus and really experience. So do you want to tell us a little bit about Marina's rationale behind that peak of 6 hours?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think this is something that she really found in her career as a performance artist. She's done many, many long durational works of performance. And, it's more of something that she noticed in the pieces that she did, that something transformative would usually happen at the 6-hour mark. Somehow 5 hours was just a little bit too short. And in her experience, and also in her experience with talking to other performance artists who had performed for long durations of time, they also talk about this 6-hour mark as being a moment at which the audience and the performer are really committed to the experience together. They've really devoted a half a day to this experience, and at that point there's something that happens that really changes the atmosphere of the performance. And we've actually realized this talking to other people as well, other performance artists who have done long durational works, that 6 is the most common number that people just bring up as oh, this is the moment where it really felt like it got good. I was in my stride. The audience was really there with me at this point.
I would be really I would be really curious to interview scientists to see if they have the same experience of doing an experiment for 6 hours, and if that is if that's the moment that it really works.
Well, something that I've noticed, I mean, what Marina says is that you have to go through the boredom, essentially. So there's a point where you're really, really bored, and then to go through the other side of the boredom. And what I've really noticed in talking with scientists as well is that there's such a similar process that goes into doing a science experiment as there is to doing a long durational work of performance, just in the patience that's required, the rigor, the attention to detail, the willingness to do the same thing over and over again. So there's already this natural mirroring in the processes of these two fields, and so to put them together for us seems like a very natural thing, even though it might not seem natural from an outside perspective.
Yeah, and another aspect I found really interesting is that the Institute is developing the series of workshops that are actually going to help both the audience and the artists become comfortable with this and get into the right mindset to experience this long duration work. I think it would be so interesting to what would be the impact of that on scientists that need to prepare for the mental focus of receiving a PhD over 6 years. I wonder if there's some kind of overlap there between really preparing your mind to dive that deeply into such a focused experience.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, the workshops that are taught now through the Institute and will be taught are really began, the origin of that was in the 1980s when Marina was a professor of art. She was a professor at various institutions around the world during that time, and she would teach these workshops to students of performance specifically. And this would be a series of exercises that she had created over the course of her career as an artist that she then passed on because she found that they helped her build endurance and focus and attention. And now, recently she's turned this into a method that anybody can experience, not just students of performance. And so this is something that I'd be really curious to see how, I believe that scientists have gone through the experience because it now travels as an installation, but I'd be really curious to talk to a scientist to see how that would impact their process and their attention, their focus to their work, what their experience of time is in those moments.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's so interesting also that, our overlap with Suzanne Dyer's lab. And we Imagine Science. We film weekly films, and we host our annual film festival as well as events throughout the year. But we just so happened to film one of our spotlight films on Suzanne Dyer's lab, who is a neuroscientist and actually has collaborated with the institute before on brainwave overlap between if you're making direct eye contact with someone for so long. I mean, is there something that's happening in the brain that actually syncs at a certain moment? Siena, do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with working with Suzanne?
Yeah, absolutely. Suzanne's the best. So basically what happened was after The Artist is Present, which was Marina's performance in 2010, neuroscientists, including Suzanne, got very, at the moment, neuroscientists, including Suzanne, got very interested in why so many people had this very strong emotional reaction as they were sitting across from Marina during this performance. And so essentially what Suzanne proposed and what they ended up doing was creating a restaging of The Artist is Present as a neuroscience experiment. So it was exactly the same setup, except in this case the subjects or the participants were wearing EEG, emotive headsets. And so the idea was to see what was happening in those moments of connection or perceived emotional connection. Was there something on a biological level that could be seen through analyzing the brainwaves of the participants? And what they found, of course, they're still analyzing the data because these experiments, require a lot of aftermath and a lot of data analysis after the fact. But what they're finding is that there were, generally speaking, there was a lot more that was interesting that was happening than they had expected, I believe. And so this turned into a series of 3 other experiments that are now traveling sort of public installations that are also about what happens when we look each other in the eye. So one of them is a cart or a small car that you sit in across from somebody and you stare at them in the eyes. And you can do a number of things in this case that in an attempt to try and build a connection with the person you're sitting across from. And the speed of the car actually is determined by how in sync your brainwaves are in those moments. And so the more connected you are, the more your brainwaves are aligned with the person who you're sitting across from, the faster the car goes in that case. And there's another experiment that takes place in sort of almost like a cocoon-like shell, and you sit in, and it's in complete darkness. And then once you start to make a connection with someone, the cocoon lights up. And so it's these beautiful installations that sort of combine art and science in this way that also allows the public to engage and understand the merits of both, looking at these experiments from both artistic and scientific angles.
Right.
So that's really what's going on. We actually have a short film about these experiments that I posted on the event page if anybody is interested in watching the film as well, just to learn a little bit more. And then when we realized at Imagine Science that you guys had talked to Suzanne, we decided to do this lab visit together, which is a really exciting thing that we can talk about now if you'd like.
Yeah. So our most recent, or I guess the launch of our collaboration, was this joint lab visit. Where Imagine Science Films had the opportunity to photograph and film a visit with the Marina Abramovic Institute to this lab. And actually, Siena, do you want to go into a little bit more detail about the machine and nose experience and the content that we're going to be posting on Immaterial Journal?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So essentially, we just launched a new online platform for immaterial art, long durational work, and multidisciplinary collaboration. So that's called Immaterial Journal, and it's at immaterial.org through our website. It's kind of hosted in our website. And essentially what we're doing for this is interviewing people that are really interesting in some way that's related to these fields. And so Suzanne was obviously a clear choice to have a lab visit with her. And we do this series called 6 Hours With, where we spend 6 hours with these people, of course, because we're interested in durational experience. And so we actually spent 6 hours with 2 filmmakers from Imagine Science at Suzanne Dyer's lab, and we interviewed a number of the people at the neuroscience lab. So we spoke to David Poppel, who is a neurolinguist, and we spoke to Suzanne and her high school student who's been analyzing some of the data from the Mutual Wave Machine, which is one of these traveling installations. We spoke with a musician who studies how rhythm impacts. So actually, he's a bassist, and he studies the neurological basis for rhythm, for perceiving rhythm in the brain. So these amazing people who are doing this incredible work, we spoke to them, and then Noah, who's our technology director here, went through a MEG experiment. So a MEG machine is like an MRI, but it studies magnetic fields in the brain, and And essentially, we had him become a test subject for one of the neuroscience experiments by Jess Rowland, who is also a musician and a sound artist and a neuroscientist. So we have this whole video of this experience, and Noah's written an article about what his time was like, and Sarah, one of the filmmakers from Imagine Science, also wrote an article that will be going up today.
So that's kind of, I guess, an example of how we hope to be collaborating in the upcoming months. In addition to doing some joint filmmaking, we also hope to actually live stream some long duration scientific experiments, as well as scientifically oriented performance art. So as we mentioned before, kind of this parallel between performance art and science is really this experience and mental preparation of doing the same task for more than 6 hours. And so we want to do some live streaming events of scientists in a lab for an entire day, an entire week, as well as the organisms that they're working on that can take up to a day to fully develop or multiply or grow, and kind of how this experience can be broadcasted over time, in real time, and that would be showcased on in the Immaterial Journal.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I'm so excited about with working with Imagine Science with you guys is that in addition to this sort of like-minded mission of bringing art and science, art and science together, artists and scientists to collaborate on projects, we also share this similar interest in transparency of process. So this idea that the process behind making these works and the process behind doing a science experiment is really interesting and really can be really educational, but also just a fascinating tool to understand what is happening in these science experiments or in these performance art pieces or in whatever form it is. So we both share this interest about kind of peeling back the curtain and looking at what's happening in these moments where someone is creating a science experiment or performing a science experiment or creating an artwork.
Yeah, well, and I think it's also especially interesting because, in this day and age, everyone wants information instantaneously, and we're kind of removed from this idea of spending a long period of time really diving into something deeply. And so I think that's, with Siena, like you were saying, having a lab commit to having us come in for 6 hours and really taking the time to understand. I mean, there's this outcome that is very unique that I think, we can kind of show the appreciation for this experience and mentally committing yourself to, and physically committing for yourself to something for that period of time. I mean, there's this unique result that happens, and it really kind of shows, especially in a lab environment, for example, students that are watching, they can really imagine what it would be like to be doing, the same experiment over and over again for, a week's time, and kind of the ins and outs of what that entails, rather than just reading about it online or, talking to a friend briefly about it. They almost have a chance to experience it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things, too, that I think is so important. What we did a lab visit with a particle physicist, a theoretical physicist who studies string theory primarily a few weeks ago, and he's a fascinating guy. He's spent many years, I think 20 years, studying physics and theorizing about what the phenomena that happen at the smallest level that we can imagine, at Planck's lengths they call them. And what he said was he's really interested in working with artists, and he's done a couple collaborations in the past. But what he stressed to us when we were there was that if you put an artist and a scientist in a room for a short period of time, they may not really walk away with a deep understanding of the time that was spent mastering the craft, learning about the field. But if so what he said was really what he's interested in is durational collaboration, which I love that term, which basically means that it's not just a singular one-off workshop or event, but you actually spend time in a collaboration, appreciating the historical context for the work that the other person has done, appreciating the depth of knowledge that they've built over time. And as you said, that the way to do that is really to actually spend time as an audience member or a collaborator with the people that you're working with. or with the performer that you're watching.
Yeah, no, I completely. So I'm really excited moving forward in this partnership and kind of seeing where this is going to take us. We have a couple of projects in mind already, so I hope everyone watching will will tune in the next few weeks and see what we're producing in this exciting partnership. And a couple of other things that we're definitely going to be collaborating on will be during the festival, the Imagine Science Film Festival, October 17th. We're going to be opening at Google and actually announcing a 48-hour film competition where we're going to be having scientists and filmmakers and artists all collaborating to make a film together. And as Siena was saying, kind of making them spend these 2 days together and really seeing what that duration of time, what the outcome will be in terms of them having some kind of deep collaboration, rather than, you know, a scientist and a filmmaker just collaborating and the scientist kind of advising during post-production. We're going to have them be working together simultaneously for these 2 days and really kind of mentor them in this long duration experience. So stay tuned for for all of these time-oriented activities the next few months.
Yeah, absolutely. And around that time period, we'll definitely, you know, we're doing a 72-hour workshop at MENA Contemporary, so we're talking about ways that we can kind of combine these events in some way, or have overlap, because definitely the interest in duration, the interest in bringing these multidisciplinary conversations to life is shared with the both of us, with the both of our organizations.
Yeah, and I just really also appreciate kind of the scientific roots of the Institute, you know, and this idea of observing performance art as having some kind of experience that is more than just art. There's something happening there on the physical level that you're trying to get an understanding from the scientific perspective. It is almost like an experiment in itself, as you're observing the performance artist. You're making a hypothesis of maybe why this is happening, and then you're actually, you know, talking to scientists about possibly what the roots are of this. And, you know, Imagine Science just totally appreciates that process. You know, and that's what we try to look for in the filmmaking process itself, is we really try to look at it from a scientific viewpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something else that artists and scientists both share is this deep curiosity, typically, about just the world and how it works. And I think that that's something that really allows for these collaborations to happen and be successful over time. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I guess, Siena, if there's anything you want to add, I'm really looking forward to this partnership, and
me too. It's really great.
Producing in the next few weeks.
And you know, the one thing I would just add is that, you know, these materials from this lab visit that we did in collaboration with Imagine Science are going to be posted. The first piece is going up today, the first two pieces. So the piece by Sarah, who's an Imagine Science filmmaker, as well as from Noah, who went through the MEG experiment, will be going up today. And we're going to be releasing them serially through Immaterial and through Imagine Science, your platform. So just stay tuned, and I'll post some relevant links on the page as they become available.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Siena, and I look forward to hosting more Experimentas with you over the next few months, as well as joint events and shared film material from our different lab visits. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward
today, and we look forward to collaborating over the next few weeks.
Awesome. Thanks so much. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye.